Here's my Zoom audience. Okay, think of a time where you or maybe someone you know had came up with a solution to resolve a problem, maybe a fight or argument. However, the solution had solved that one problem for the time being, but only led to even worse problems later on. Because this is exactly what happened with the Treaty of Versailles. Today, I will be informing you on why the Treaty of Versailles is one of the worst treaties in history. The point of this is to give clarity, because some people might not know. It'll give clarity between World War I and World War II, and it's also important to understand your history so we know it and we can prevent it from happening again. I have taken many history classes, and it's one of my favorite topics, and all of these facts are from historians. So I will first talk about what led up to the treaty, and then I'll explain what the treaty was, and then summarize the main points of it. And finally, I will go through the aftermath of the treaty. So, what led up to the treaty? World War I was obviously in take from 1914 to 1918. It was a war in Europe, and it was the Allied powers, which the USA was a part of, against the Central powers. The war jump-started when Germany invaded Belgium and then declared war against Russia. Bloody war for the next 4 years, and over 8.5 million people had died as a result of the war, and it was nicknamed the Great War. Woodrow Wilson was the president at the time, and he gave a speech towards the end of the war called his 14 points. He gave the speech to Congress, and it laid out his post-war vision on world peace, and this also led to the formation of the League of Nations. After that, there was a Paris Peace Conference held in early 1919 at Versailles outside of Paris, and the representatives had came up with a Treaty of Versailles. And now that you know how the treaty kind of came to be, I'll tell you how it was formed and what it consisted of. When it comes to the treaty itself, Woodrow Wilson wanted his 14 points to be a main part of the treaty. Michael Nieberg, a historian who specializes in 20th century military, states in his 2017 book, The Treaty of Versailles, A Concise History, Wilson saw his 14 points as the basis for construction of a new world order. However, critics at the time thought Wilson's vision was naive, and the British saw it as a threat to their own power. And also the French wanted to make the treaty even more harsh to get back at Germany. For the main parts of the treaty, Alex Brown sums up the main points of the Treaty of Versailles in his 2020 article, The Key Points of the Treaty of Versailles. He explains the main points being that Germany had to pay $31.4 billion in war reparations, which would be almost $500 million in today. Germany also had to give up most of their territories, shrink their army to 1,000 men, lower their military power, which means no submarines or air forces, and also take blame for starting of the war. And obviously Germany didn't like that. Germany liked Wilson's original 14 points because it offered them some hope. But the final draft did not end up that way, and they replied with fury and anger and even protested the treaty by not attending the signing ceremony. And now that you understand what the treaty consisted of, this is what happened as a result. So obviously Germany had a very troubling economy post-war due to their large amount of debt. And they came up with a new constitution similar to the US to try and help, but it failed. However, their government thought they could just print more money to pay debt, which caused a massive hyperinflation. History.com editors described Germany in their 2017 article, The Weimar Republic, by stating, the law-abiding country crumbled into petty thievery. The Great Depression that the U.S. had also was a part of it. The U.S. stock market crashed after the war, which had a global effect but was most harmful to Germany. Germany started to recover due to the flow of American dollars, but once the stock market crashed, they couldn't satisfy their country's financial needs. German citizens grew very weary and distrustful towards their government officials, which allowed them to trust the wrong people. They looked for new leadership, but they also fueled communism, which made people turn to extreme parties. And out of the dust arose Hitler and the Nazi Party. And 1 year after Hitler was elected, he passed the Enabling Act, which allowed him to pass laws and run a country without checks and balances, and we all know the end of that story. So now you guys know all about what led up to the treaty, about the treaty, and pretty much how it started World War II. And you're now educated on the events after World War I that led up to World War II. Maybe you can win a quiz question or something like that, and understand history, and hopefully not to repeat it. So next time you resolve an issue, try to make sure it won't lead to a world war.